It was a dark and stormy night. As Mark set out on a road trip, his excitement tinged with a hint of unease. He'd always enjoyed the thrill of adventure, but this time something felt different. The desolate highway stretched before him, illuminated only by the intermittent glow of his headlights. Hours passed, and fatigue began to weigh heavily on Mark. His eyelids drooped, and his grip on the steering wheel tightened. As he fought to stay awake, he noticed a figure ahead, standing motionless on the roadside. Curiosity mingled with caution as Mark slowed down, his headlights casting an eerie glow on the stranger. The man appeared disheveled, his eyes shrouded in darkness. A sense of unease gripped Mark, but a glimmer of compassion compelled him to stop and offer assistance. Rolling down his window, Mark called out to the man. "Hey, are you okay? Do you need any help?" The stranger's voice, hoarse and desperate, echoed through the night. "Please, kind sir, my car broke down, and I'm stranded here. Can you give me a lift to the nearest town?" Mark hesitated, conflicted between his desire to help and the lingering unease in his gut. But in the end, empathy won, and he reluctantly agreed to give the stranger a ride. As the man climbed into the passenger seat, Mark's heart quickened. There was something unsettling about his presence, a silent warning that whispered caution in his ear. Suppressing his unease, Mark forced a smile and asked for the stranger's destination. "I just need to go a few miles ahead. Thank you so much for your kindness," the man replied, his voice laced with gratitude. With a renewed sense of dread, Mark resumed his journey. The silence in the car was suffocating, broken only by the sound of rain pattering against the windshield. He stole occasional glances at the stranger, who remained strangely stoic, eyes fixated on the road ahead. Minutes turned into hours, and the surroundings grew increasingly unfamiliar. Mark's unease morphed into suspicion as doubts plagued his mind. Why hadn't they reached the town yet? Shouldn't it have been just a short distance away? His thoughts were interrupted by the stranger's voice, this time laced with urgency. "Could you pull over for a moment? I need to use the bathroom urgently." Reluctantly, Mark scanned the desolate landscape for a suitable spot to stop. His instincts screamed at him to stay on guard. As the car rolled to a halt, the stranger opened the door and hurried into the darkness. Mark waited anxiously, the ticking of the rain on the roof becoming increasingly ominous. Minutes turned into an eternity, and there was no sign of the stranger's return. Fear crept up Mark's spine as he realized the horrifying truth. He had fallen into a trap. Frantically, Mark peered through the windshield, searching for any sign of the stranger. His heart pounded in his chest as he realized he was alone on that desolate road, surrounded by an overwhelming darkness that seemed to swallow him whole. The sound of approaching footsteps shattered the silence. Mark's breath caught in his throat as he turned to face the figure emerging from the shadows, a sinister smile curling on his lips. It was the stranger, his true intentions now revealed. "What do you want?" Mark managed to choke out, his voice trembling with fear. The thief's reply scared Mark. "Everything, my friend. Everything you hold dear." And with those haunting words, the thief lunged forward, his hands reaching out for Mark's possessions. Fear gripped Mark's heart as he realized the true nature of the stranger he had picked up on that desolate road. The thief's hands reached out greedily, snatching Mark's possessions, one by one. His heart sank as he watched his belongings vanish into the clutches of darkness. In that moment, survival instincts kicked in, and Mark's flight response surged through his veins. Adrenaline coursed through his body as he pushed open the car door and stumbled out into the rain, soaked night. The thief's laughter echoed behind him as Mark sprinted into the darkness, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the stranger's presence hot on his heels, his footsteps growing louder with each passing second. Rain poured down relentlessly, drenching Mark to the bone. The slick road threatened to send him sprawling to the ground, but he fought against the elements, driven by a desperate need to escape. Every fiber of Mark's being screamed at him to find help, to reach the safety of civilization. He prayed for a sign, a glimmer of light in the distance. And then, like a mirage in the distance, and then, like a mirage in the storm, he spotted it, an old, dilapidated motel nestled on the outskirts of the road. Summoning his last reserves of strength, Mark sprinted towards the motel, his heart pounding in his chest. He burst through the entrance, gasping for breath, rainwater cascading off his trembling form. The motel's receptionist, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, looked up in surprise. "What happened? Are you okay?" she asked, concern etched on her face. Mark struggled to catch his breath, his words tumbling out incoherently. "There's a man! He tried to rob me! On the road! Please, call the police!" The receptionist sprang into action, dialing the emergency number, her fingers shaking with urgency. As she relayed Mark's distress, he scanned his surroundings, the storm raging outside the motel's windows. Darkness cloaked the area, concealing any trace of the pursuing thief. Minutes felt like hours as Mark awaited the arrival of the police. His mind raced, questioning the stranger's motives, wondering if he would strike again. The suspense weighed heavily on him, the lingering fear of what might unfold. Finally, the distant wail of sirens pierced the night. Mark let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, a glimmer of hope flickering in his weary eyes. Help was on its way, but the thief remained at large, lurking in the shadows. As the police arrived, questions were fired at Mark, their seriousness mirroring the gravity of the situation. He provided a detailed account of the encounter, offering any shred of information that might aid in apprehending the thief. Hours turned into days, and the investigation continued, but the mysterious stranger remained elusive. Mark couldn't shake off the feeling that the thief was still out there, lurking, waiting for the opportune moment to strike again. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow dancing in the corner of his eye, made Mark to be in terror. He couldn't escape the haunting memory of that encounter, the theft that had left him both physically and emotionally violated. In the depths of his nightmares, Mark wondered if he would ever find solace, if the thief would ever be brought to justice. As he stared into the abyss of uncertainty, his heart pounded with the realization that the horror might not be over, that the darkness that had consumed his road trip might never truly release its grip. Mary and John, a young couple deeply in love, embarked on a road trip to celebrate their anniversary. They set off with excitement, eager to explore new places and create lasting memories. The sun shone brightly overhead, casting a warm glow on the open road ahead. As they ventured deeper into the countryside, they encountered an old gas station. With their car in need of fuel, they decided to make a quick stop. The air around the station felt eerie, as if time had stood still. An uneasy feeling settled upon them, but they dismissed it as mere imagination. Resuming their journey, they noticed a peculiar figure in the rearview mirror. A stranger, dressed in tattered clothes and wearing a wide-brimmed hat, stood near the gas station. His eyes bore into Mary and John. Unsettled, they increased their speed, hoping to leave the stranger behind. Hours passed, and darkness cloaked the world. The couple found themselves in the midst of a dense forest, surrounded by towering trees that seemed to whisper secrets. The road ahead grew narrower and winding, making them feel trapped in a labyrinth. Suddenly, a piercing sound pierced the silence, an eerie cry. Their hearts raced with fear, and they glimpsed the stranger standing on the roadside, his haunting gaze fixed upon them once more. Panic gripped their souls as they realized he had been following them all along. Frantically, Mary and John searched for a place to hide, desperate to escape the clutches of the stranger. They stumbled upon an old, dilapidated cabin hidden deep within the forest. Seemed like their only chance for safety. With trembling hands, they pushed open the creaking door and entered the musty interior. The air was heavy with the scent of decay, and shadows danced menacingly on the walls. They huddled together, praying for the nightmare to end. But little did they know that this was only the beginning of their harrowing ordeal. The stranger's presence continued to loom over them, his intentions unknown and malevolent. In the darkness of that forsaken cabin, Mary and John were trapped, pursued by an enigmatic figure determined to bring them harm. Terrified and vulnerable, they could only hope for a miracle to save them from the clutches of this relentless stalker. But as the night grew darker, the odds of their survival seemed to fade, leaving them with a looming sense of dread. Inside the desolate cabin, Mary and John clung to each other, their hearts pounding in their chests. The stranger's presence weighed heavily upon them, casting a suffocating shadow over their every move. Fear gnawed at their sanity as they wondered what awaited them in the depths of this nightmare. Time became an elusive concept in that forsaken place. Hours melded into days as they remained trapped, their hopes diminishing like a flickering candle in the wind. Every creak of the floorboards and rustle of leaves outside sent shivers down their spines, amplifying their terror. As days turned into a relentless cycle of darkness and despair, they began to unravel. Sleep became a fleeting luxury as nightmares plagued their restless nights. Whispers, barely audible, echoed through the cabin, filling their minds with haunting visions. The walls seemed to close in, suffocating them in a claustrophobic embrace. In the midst of their torment, Mary and John discovered an old journal hidden beneath a decaying floorboard. Its faded pages revealed a chilling tale of the cabin's dark history, recounting stories of madness and tragedy. The very walls that surrounded them had absorbed the pain and anguish of those who had come before, and now it sought to claim them as its own. Driven by desperation, they searched for a way to break free from the clutches of the cabin's curse. They stumbled upon a forgotten ritual, an ancient incantation, believed to banish the malevolent spirits that dwelled within. With trembling hands, they attempted the ritual, hoping against hope for salvation. But their actions only awakened the darkness that lurked in the cabin's depths. Shadows danced with malicious glee, wrapping around them like tendrils of malevolence. The stranger, their relentless stalker, materialized before their eyes, his sinister grin sending waves of terror crashing over them. As Mary and John stared into the face of their tormentor, they realized that their fate had been sealed from the beginning. The cabin had claimed countless lives, and now it hungered for theirs. In a final act of defiance, they clung to each other, finding solace in their shared love amidst the encroaching darkness. The stranger's chilling laughter filled the air as he closed in on them. The cabin's walls trembled with anticipation, ready to consume their souls. In that harrowing moment, Mary and John's voices were swallowed by the abyss, their cries for help lost in a world that had turned its back on them. The world outside remained oblivious to the tragic end of Mary and John's road trip. Their disappearance became another haunting mystery, whispered among locals in hushed tones. The cabin, tainted by their presence, stood as a silent sentinel, waiting for its next unsuspecting victims to fall into its grasp. May their souls find peace amidst the eternal night that claimed them, forever lost in a road trip that took them down a path of no return. They hit the road, 4 friends on a wild adventure, seeking thrills and memories. Nothing could prepare them for the terror that awaited. With the radio blaring, they laughed and sang along, not a care in the world. The sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow on the winding highway ahead. The scent of freedom filled the air, mixed with the faint aroma of fast food wrappers. Miles flew by as they zoomed through the countryside, passing endless fields and sleepy towns. The road stretched out, tempting them to chase its elusive destination. The excitement was palpable, building with every mile marker they left behind. But as the shadows grew longer and the day turned into evening, darkness began to claim the land. The once inviting road now felt treacherous, lined with twisted trees that whispered secrets in the wind. Unease settled in their bones, though they brushed it off as mere jitters. Raindrops started to splatter against the windshield, a warning from the heavens. The wipers fought to clear glass, but the downpour intensified, blurring their vision. Tension filled the car, and nervous glances were exchanged. Suddenly, from the blackness ahead, A pair of glaring headlights pierced through the storm. A truck barreled towards them, seemingly out of control. Panic seized their hearts, and they instinctively swerved to avoid the impending collision. The tires screeched, fighting against the slick road. Metal twisted and glass shattered as their car collided with an ancient oak tree. Time seemed to stand still in that moment of impact, a cruel freeze, frame capturing their impending doom. Airbags deployed, engulfing them in a suffocating embrace. Pain seared through their bodies, cries of agony filling the wreckage. Blood mingled with rain, painting a macabre picture on the shattered windshield. Helpless and disoriented, they fought to catch their breath. The storm raged on, the heavens weeping for the tragedy that had unfolded. They were trapped in the twisted metal coffin, surrounded by darkness and despair. Fear clawed at their souls as they realized this was no ordinary accident. Something sinister had orchestrated their fates, turning their joyous road trip into a nightmare. The road ahead, once filled with promise, now led only to their demise. In the aftermath of the devastating crash, their bodies ached, battered, and broken. Blood dripped from open wounds, staining their clothes and the wreckage around them. But the pain they felt was not just physical. A lingering terror gripped their hearts. As they struggled to free themselves from the twisted metal, they became aware of a chilling presence in the air. Whispers echoed through the night, carried by the wind, weaving tales of despair and death. Shadows danced ominously, distorting the wreckage into grotesque shapes. One by one, they managed to escape the confines of the mangled car, stumbling into the desolate road. Rain poured relentlessly, mixing with their tears and washing away any trace of hope. They huddled together, seeking solace in their shared terror. It was then that they heard it. A haunting melody, a mournful tune that seemed to rise from the very depths of the earth. The source was unclear, the notes drifting in and out of their consciousness. It tugged at their souls, drawing them further into the abyss. With trepidation, they stumbled forward, following the eerie music that beckoned them into the darkness. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if an invisible force sought to drag them down, deeper into the abyss. They were trapped in a macabre dance, unable to break free. The road stretched endlessly, leading them to an abandoned, dilapidated house. Its broken windows and crumbling walls exuded an aura of malevolence. The haunting melody grew louder, drawing them closer to their doom. Against their better judgment, they entered the house, the floorboards creaking beneath their weight. Shadows writhed on the walls, playing tricks on their already frazzled minds. The air turned icy, chilling them to the core. Room by room, they ventured deeper into the bowels of the house, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and morbid curiosity. Whispers followed them, filling their ears with promises of suffering and eternal torment. The walls seemed to close in, suffocating them with an oppressive darkness. And then they saw it. A flickering candle casting eerie shadows on a decrepit altar. The haunting melody reached its crescendo, blending with guttural chants that seemed to reverberate through their very souls. Their eyes widened in horror as they realized the true nature of their predicament. They were not victims of a mere accident. They were unwitting participants in a sinister ritual. Their road trip had been a trap, leading them to this cursed place. The crash had been orchestrated, a sacrifice to summon unspeakable evil. With dread filling their hearts, they realized their fate was sealed. Their screams merged with the symphony of darkness, lost in the void of the unholy ritual. The shadows devoured them one by one, their souls forever condemned to wander the haunted road. And so, their road trip, filled with laughter and dreams, ended in a tragic nightmare. Their names would be forgotten, lost to the annals of a cursed road, a cautionary tale whispered by those who dare to venture into the unknown.